He's at war with woke.
Joe Concha
thinks liberals are a joke.
Joe Concha.
This is the Joe Concha Show, weekday edition, sponsored by the Tunnel to Towers Foundation. Here's Joe Concha.
And welcome, everybody. Hopefully you are still afloat in some way, shape, or form. If you're in the New York, New Jersey area, wow, those are some crazy storms. And it's, I get it. It's July. It's hot. Something's got to give sometimes when you have heat and humidity meeting whatever else when a storm comes by. And sure enough, tornado warnings, I don't remember being a thing when I was growing up here in New Jersey, but they seem to be more and more of a thing now. They don't tend to come to fruition in any real way, shape, or form. But if I wanted to live in Kansas, I'll move to Kansas. Okay. Anyway, big story today as far as a software error. Yeah. An error. Just, a computer just happened to allow. We're talking more than 6,000 illegals to register to vote in this country, not this country, this state of New Jersey. And Mikey Sherrill took to the mic to talk about this. And by the way, 6,600 more than were given the ability to register to vote, and hundreds took advantage of that loophole, technical loophole that just happened to avail itself before an election. Fascinating. Now, this happened during the Phil Murphy administration. He of bad teeth, despite being a millionaire, but nevertheless, happened under a Democrat. Now, Mikey has basically said, hey, I got nothing to do with this, but I'm here to reveal it now. And it's just amazing because after she talks about this, and obviously this takes away the whole claim by Democrats, which says illegals would never vote, even if they're given the opportunity to do so because it's illegal. Yeah, they entered the country illegally. I think we're past the whole, are they worried about doing something illegal part, right? And this is just one example of what we know about. And in states, let's look at the 2020 election, for example, decided by 10,000 votes, like Georgia, 12,000, Arizona, 10,000, Wisconsin, 20,000. That's enough to turn a presidential election if President Trump had won all three of those states in 2020. And that's not even talking about what may have happened in Pennsylvania or Michigan or other swing states where everybody has the right to ask the very basic question of how Joe friggin' Biden got 81 million votes in 2020, 13 million more than Barack Obama. Joe Biden, the most uninspiring, incoherent candidate to ever seek the presidency, beats a guy that you could at least say does a good speech in Obama, who had a base and had a movement and electricity behind him in 2008. And Biden, you could talk about, population growth and, there's always more votes. Okay. So how did Biden get 81 million with Trump on the ballot? Because then the argument also is that, people are voting against Trump, and that wave of anti-Trumpism led to Biden getting 81 million votes. Biden didn't really get it. It was more of an anti-Trump sentiment. Okay. All that said, then how exactly did Kamala Harris get 6 million less votes than Biden? Interesting. So we have to ask these questions around, is there voter fraud happening in this country? So President Trump did a speech last Thursday and talked about this, outlined it, how the Chinese have accessed 220 million voter rolls and all these other allegations from CIA and FBI reports at the time. And it got poo-pooed by the media, completely dismissed. Anyway, Mikey Sherrill, the governor of New Jersey, after sharing that, yes, voter fraud existed in her state to the tune of thousands, she still says, after all that, Trump has no evidence. He has no standing here. He's the guy who cries wolf. Has the audacity to say this after she literally proved Trump's point in cut number 21. Go.
Let me be clear. Donald Trump has zero credibility on the issue of election integrity. For the past 10 years, he's cried wolf and peddled bizarre conspiracy theories about fraud with no evidence. I saw the consequences of Trump's lies on January 6th. I was in the Capitol when he and his followers tried to steal the election and put the lives of hundreds of members of our law enforcement at risk.
Of course, she's reading what is written for her there, as you can tell. Trump made bizarre claims about voter fraud and illegals voting in elections. Literally, she announced 20 seconds before that that's exactly what happened in New Jersey. and God knows wherever else because of a, quote, software error, unquote. It's weird how the errors always seem to go in one direction to benefit a certain party. All right, well, let's look back at all the fun here, shall we? After last Thursday's speech, primetime, President Trump, 9 p.m., we took most of it here on this show that I tossed to at WABC. Jonathan Karl at ABC News, like seconds after Trump was done speaking, and all these documents were unclassified, hundreds of them. Jonathan Karl apparently is the best speed reader ever because 3 minutes after the speech, well, he went through them, not all of them, but he just came to this conclusion that he came to even before the speech. There's no evidence to back Trump's voter fraud claim whatsoever. Now, how does this sound in light of what we're hearing today out of New Jersey? Not too good. Cut number 20, go.
The president made some extraordinary allegations. I mean, he said that our election system, our security is catastrophically short. It dangerously exposed to hacking. When you have no trust, there is no greatness, and we can't trust our election systems. But looking through these, we have a lot more to look through. I don't see anything that comes anywhere near making that case. What I see is documents presented that are intended to raise doubts about our security, but nothing that suggests there is actually a security issue with our elections.
No, none whatsoever. Except in 2016, after Trump won, apparently Russia was able to hack our election quite easily. Russia stole votes from Hillary Clinton and gave them to Donald Trump. That's what your media told you. So apparently elections were very insecure or not secure back in 2016 when the wrong guy won. And then when the right guy won in the eyes of media, then suddenly it's the most secure, most free and fair election you could possibly imagine. They don't know how asinine they sound when they say this stuff. So that's Jonathan Karl of ABC News, which might as well be called MSABC at this point. Meanwhile, let's do another flashback to George Stephanopoulos, who again was Bill Clinton's right-hand man. And now he's a chief anchor at ABC News because I'm sure he's totally neutral. He was just able to shake off all that Democrat stuff all over him as far as working for a party for many years and just become a totally objective anchor like Walter Cronkite or Peter Jennings. And here he is tossing to a profoundly horrible reporter in Rachel Scott, who is absolutely patently anti-Trump. And you listen to this now, again, in light of the governor of New Jersey, who is a Democrat, confirming that voter fraud existed in her state before an election 3 years ago, 2 years ago, and more than 6,000 illegals were registered or had the ability to register to vote because of a software error at the DMV of New Jersey. So again, with that setup, here's Stephanopoulos and Rachel Scott, and it's even more unintentionally hilarious than you could possibly imagine. And cut number 19, go.
Now to President Trump's primetime address last night, where he continued his campaign to cast doubt on the 2020 election he lost and the 2026 midterms he fears losing. He did it by making a series of misleading claims and citing dated intelligence that failed to demonstrate any votes were actually compromised. Senior political correspondent Rachel Scott is at the White House with the latest. Good morning, Rachel.
George, good morning to you. And Republicans on Capitol Hill were hoping the president would focus on immigration, on the economy, issues they believe will be important to voters this midterm election. But instead, the president came before the American people to talk about an election that he lost 6 years ago, using unfounded claims to demand sweeping changes ahead of the midterms.
Unfounded claims, misleading claims. Trump fears he's going to lose in 2026, so he's working the refs now at this point, or something. Stephanopoulos and Scott over at MSABC. And again, boy, don't they sound foolish now. I cannot wait to see the coverage moving forward as far as this New Jersey thing, because it should be a lead story on ABC World News Tonight, NBC Nightly News, CBS Evening News, MS Now, CNN. Somehow, what I'm already seeing is, well, you know, this is just a couple thousand people that were accidentally registered to vote who are here illegally. And it really doesn't mean anything, the whole scheme of things, when we have 340 million people in this country. So, no, this is a pattern. I am certain that these software errors occurred in other states because, well, why wouldn't they? Remember what happened in Fulton County, Georgia, Atlanta, 2020 election, night of. Trump is up 17 points on Joe Biden after election night votes are counted. And then a pipe burst at the one location where most of the votes were held in Fulton County. And then they couldn't count the votes for 2 days. You never really saw any footage of this pipe bursting, water everywhere type of thing. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I just found it interesting that Trump was up by 17 points and then suddenly lost Georgia by about 12,000 votes. It's pretty interesting, right? So just asking questions here, people. I'm not saying that the voting machines change votes. I'm saying that, boy, when you take 2 days off because of a water main break and then suddenly everything breaks for the Democrat. And I get that more Democrats vote in mail-in ballots than Republicans, but down 17 points that much in a state that Republicans almost always win, Georgia? Okay. And then after that, Georgia passed all these sweeping voting laws that people called, including Joe Biden, including Kamala Harris, including many in legacy media, Jim Crow 2.0. And then all we know is that we saw record turnout in Georgia for elections that followed then, and then Trump won Georgia relatively comfortably in 2024. Funny how that happened. No water main break that night. Well, let's go to our friend BS, otherwise known as Brian Stelter, basically comparing Trump's claims during his speech last Thursday to explosive diarrhea, which is ironic coming from this turd. This is cut number 17. Go.
People are talking about this speech tonight like we talk about the explosive diarrhea cases all across the country. That it's gross, that it's ugly, that it's bad, that it shouldn't be going on, that it should be stopped. But the speech is going forward. So the major networks in this country have a really tough decision to make tonight about how to cover the speech, whether to show it live, whether to interrupt if the lies become so serious. I think we should start from the premise that most Americans disapprove of Trump and don't believe his election lies. And so it's an environment that is not, positive for him. And yet he has used his government to threaten networks, especially the broadcast networks, ABC and NBC. There are open, active investigations into those networks. So these broadcasters are, honestly, right now, Dana, there are hours-long meetings going on at ABC, at NBC, at CBS about what to do tonight. And none of the networks, not CNN, none of the networks have commented on how they're going to handle the speech. I even have two sources of Fox News.
That's good, Kev. So here's the thing. He called them, Stelter did, Trump's election lies, even before hearing Trump's speech outlining how this may be happening as far as fraud. Now, I want to see CNN, I want to see Stelter in particular, talk about what the governor of New Jersey just shared. More than 6,000 illegals being registered to vote accidentally, scare quotes, because of also scare quotes, software error. And then hundreds ended up taking advantage of that, right? This is a huge, huge story, but of course it will be poo-pooed, dismissed, and memory hold from our legacy media, but not here. That is certainly for sure. Okay, before we go to break, Stephen Miller, senior advisor, deputy chief of staff to Susie Wiles and therefore President Trump, talking about how the 2020 census was a very, very big deal. And that allowed, and it was wrong. By the census even admits it was wrong in terms of the way congressional seats were allocated based on population and even electoral votes as well based on state. And Miller, by his calculation, and by many others as well, Democrats would have 20 to 30 less seats if not for that rigged census. He lays it out perfectly here, as he always does, in cut number 18. Go.
Illinois, Chicago, New York, Massachusetts. Democrats have gerrymandered the vote beyond recognition to try to maintain their advantage in the House elections. On top of that, let's not forget, Democrats rigged the 2020 census by including illegal aliens. Remember, they sued Donald Trump. They sued the administration. They fought tooth and nail to include illegal aliens in the census. 20 to 30 of House Democrat seats wouldn't exist but for illegal aliens. Texas is taking just a small corrective step against this ocean of fraud, this ocean of abuse by the corrupt Democrat Party, Sean.
That's the thing, right? Not just they miscounted population, but illegals were included in the census. That's a whole bowl of wrong, and you would hope that this was fixed before the 2028 presidential election, but it looks like logistically that won't be able to be done at least until 2030, which would impact, obviously, the 2032 election. And as we talked about, Florida is going to gain electoral votes, which means that's an even more red state that Republicans can count on, right? I mean, DeSantis won by 18 there as governor. Trump won by, I think, 14 there in the presidential election. Texas will gain electoral votes. Utah will gain electoral votes. Idaho will gain electoral votes. Tennessee will gain electoral votes. South Carolina may gain electoral votes. You know who's going to lose electoral votes? New York, Illinois, California, Rhode Island, and Minnesota. Bad news for Democrats. That's why they are calling over and over again now to abolish electoral college, because every other presidential election going forward, given where this Democrat Party is going so far to the left and where they already are as it is, which is crazy town, they'll never win another presidential election again if the electoral college is the place that decides that. Anyway, this is Joe Concha. This is the Joe Concha Show. Back with so much more in just a moment.
This is the Joe Concha Show, weekday edition.
Joe Concha.
Sponsored by the Tunnel to Towers Foundation. This is the Joe Concha Show, weekday edition, sponsored by the Tunnel to Towers Foundation. Here's Joe Concha.
Welcome back, everybody. So we had that horrible attack at 26 Federal Plaza yesterday, an insane maniac attacking the building because of ICE had a bunch of anti-ICE material on him at the time. Obviously, Democrat rhetoric around ICE being Nazi, Gestapo, fascist, secret police that must be stopped, which means, I guess, kill them. Tom Homan has had enough, right? He is the border czar. And again, he says exactly what many of us feel as far as rhetoric leading to horrible actions here. And cut number one, go.
You know, guys, ICE agents are mom and dads too. They don't hang their heart on a hook every day to do this job. And it's just not attacking the ICE agents, attacking their spouses and children, and no one knows that better than me. I can't even go get a quart of milk at a grocery store without a security detail. Why? Because I'm enforcing laws in this country. It's pathetic and it's disgusting. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you, Mr. Homan.
And he just walked off at that point, because it's true. These are people with families, too. They're just trying to enforce the law. That's all. And they need to be perfect in these situations. So when you're Alex Preddy and you bring a gun to an ICE confrontation and then you get shot and killed because someone sees gun during a physical confrontation, something bad can happen. You're Renee Good and you drive a car into an ICE agent and you cause internal bleeding because you impacted him in that regard. That ICE agent may fire back because now that car has become a deadly weapon. We saw the same thing in Maine as well. And yet here Democrats see a political opportunity, demean ICE, attack them, call for them to be abolished, protect illegals, and maybe because now apparently they're able to vote in New Jersey, they'll vote for you too. And that is the calculus here at this point. Anyway, this is Joe Concha. This is the Joe Concha Show. Back with so much more in just a moment.
This is the Joe Concha Show, weekday edition, sponsored by the Tunnel to Towers Foundation. Here's Joe Concha.
Welcome back, everybody. So, Hassan Piker, who is basically now being called the Joe Rogan of the left. It's funny when you hear that because Joe Rogan was on the left. This guy literally endorsed Bernie Sanders in 2020. That's this decade at last check. And now, Rogan since has endorsed Trump. He did before the 2024 election, and they lost their Joe Rogan, the left, when they had him in the first place. So now they've turned to Hassan Piker. And this guy, I don't even know how to explain how anybody, in terms of being a Democrat lawmaker, goes on this person's show. We'll go through the list again. He's called all Jews inbreds. That's a quote. He said, America deserved 9/11. He said that the worst day of the 20th century was when the Soviet Union fell. This is a guy who says he supports Hamas 1,000 times more than Israel. Hamas. I can go on in terms of the things this guy has said, including calling for the assassination of Donald Trump and calling for Republicans to be murdered, including Senator Rick Scott. All right. In a sane world, this person would be shunned and laughed at and just dismissed And every Democrat lawmaker would just be like, I'm not going to associate myself with this guy, except that Mamdani had him to his victory party and has appeared on his podcast. And AOC has done the same thing. And Representative Ro Khanna, who really wants to be president, has been on his show, as has Bernie Sanders. So, yeah, that's their new mascot, I guess. And here he is now on his podcast talking about one of the great leaders of the world of all time. And it's only a guy who killed something like 90 million people. Cut 4, go.
I got stopped by a cop who thought I was like making fun of Mao Zedong, which I never would and never will. Mao Zedong is a one of the great leaders of this world. Okay, a man who changed the entire universe, the entire planet,
changed the whole universe and the entire planet. Oh, okay. We sure did. All right. Yeah. Are you done?
Let's be real, but the People's Republic of China would not exist without Mao Zedong.
Wouldn't that be a good thing? In its current form? Yeah, pretty sure. Mao was a Marxist, became a founding member of the Chinese Communist Party back in 1921. And he was leader there from 1949 till 1976 and killed tens of millions of people. Also formed a nice alliance with the Soviet Union under Joseph Stalin. And this guy is saying that he is one of the great leaders of the world ever. This is a sick individual. And any Democrat that goes on this person's podcast is so thirsty for power and so wants to reach that growing anti-Semitic wing of the Democrat Party. They're willing to sacrifice everything in terms of integrity and credibility, as if they had any in the first place, I guess, to do so. And that's a whole bowl of wrong, obviously. Meanwhile, Beto 2.0, otherwise known as James Tallarico, down in Texas. This is another insane Democrat trying to win. It's not like Abdul El Sayed trying to win in a purple state of Michigan. Texas has been red for some time. President Trump won it by nearly 14 points. And yet there are people that are seriously taking James Tallarico seriously. Again, to go through the list, he thinks that God is non-binary. He thinks that Catholics are actually a pro-choice religion. Actually believes there are not one, not two, but 6 genders, and bragged about having a non-meat campaign in a state that really likes beef, a Lone Star state. Anyway, here is Beto 2.0 talking about, again, the pandering is just so, it's enough to make your hair hurt. Law enforcement is being weaponized against certain people, and you'll never guess who he's going to name here while he's talking to, ding, 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 a black audience in cut number 8. Go.
Law enforcement is here to serve us. It is here to protect us. And too often, we see law enforcement weaponized against black and brown communities in this state. Mm-hmm. We have a deeply broken justice system. We have a deeply broken approach to policing.
Oh, maybe we should defund that approach to policing, huh? Again, he's running a New York, Seattle campaign in Texas statewide, and this ain't going to work. Of course, he says that to a black and brown audience because he's telling them what they want to hear. And for people that say that he's going to win there, Beto O'Rourke, let's put it this way, who was a darling, just like Tallarico is among legacy media, ran for, let's see, Senate, lost, governor, lost, president, really lost, like shut down his campaign like 5 minutes after it began. So you're going to run somebody worse here, and he is worse, which is really a low bar. It just ain't going to happen. Meanwhile, Zoran Mamdani is the same person he was 2, 3, 4, 6 years ago. And there's video that shows who he was back then. And now he just hides it. He's a politician, right? And that's how that's going to work. Here is Mamdani in a flashback talking about, and he wants to do this, still wants to, he just words it differently. Why don't we just give housing to everybody? Because housing is a right to every single person in this country. You shouldn't have to earn buying a home. The government should just give it to you, commie-style, I guess. And to do so, maybe you have to seize private property from people who actually earned buying that house in the first place. Again, his own words, cut number 9, go.
Oh, my platform is that every single person should have housing. And I think faced with these two options, the system has hundreds of thousands of people unhoused, right? For what? And if there was any system that could guarantee each person housing, whether you call it the abolition of private property or you call it, just a statewide housing guarantee, it is preferable to what is going on right now. And I think that people try and play like gotcha games about these kinds of things. And it's like, look, I care more about whether somebody has a home.
So you don't care about the people that actually paid for their homes in the first place? The abolition of private property? That's insane stuff. And for people to say that this guy, boy, it's a shame that he was born in another country because otherwise he could be president here. You agree with this stuff? I don't care. You're Democrat, Republican. It doesn't matter. But really, if you're a Democrat, like an Ed Koch kind of Democrat, a Bill Clinton kind of Democrat, you agree with that? The abolition of private property? Everybody has a right to a home? And again, has no idea because this guy has never held a job in his life, even running a lemonade stand before he became mayor, how to pay for it. Except I guess he believes the rich pay for it and give to the poor. I guess that's the way that is going to work. And if you want a country like that, then fine. Have fun over in Europe because while they don't even do it to that extreme, just go move to Russia or North Korea and see how their economies are thriving under this particular perspective. Meanwhile, so we have establishment Democrats, so to speak, right? Those who have been in Senate for many, many years, like a Mark Warner of Virginia, Democrat, obviously. And here he is being asked by Joe Kernan, who does a good job here from CNBC, where Kernan asks him about socialism taking over the party. And Warner pivots in a way that you just have to utterly laugh, like break two ribs, laugh at. Oh, you got to hear this to believe it. Cut number 10, go.
You still haven't just addressed defunding police, defunding ICE, socialism, capitalism not being the type of system that the economy is based on. I know big tent, I hear all the happy talk and everything like that, but and to say, well, Graham Plattner, that we found out later that he wasn't vetted. Well, Joe, along, there were plenty of things that would have got, if Democrats didn't want to win so badly and regain power, there were plenty of things that a normal person would have said, there's a problem here.
Joe, as you know, my background, first my family graduated from college, failed a couple times in business.
What?
Then did well. I believe in the free enterprise system, but it's only going to work if everybody gets a fair shot.
Wait, what? First in my family to graduate college. What does it have to do with anything? I believe in a free market system. Great. But it ain't working. Oh, so we should embrace socialism? And again, Republicans need to bring this up more. This isn't hard. Democrats like Mark Warner, starting with Joe Biden, well, not him, whoever's running the administration, the auto pen, Kamala Harris, and everybody else in that administration and every Democrat voted for the Inflation Reduction Act, which did not reduce inflation in any way, shape, or form. In fact, it went above 9%. And now they keep talking about how the system isn't working and we know how to fix it. You had 4 years to fix it, and you made it infinitely worse. So that's it. If you're a Republican running, you say, if you want to go back to those years, okay. They have shown they have no idea what they're doing. They just talk about it. You think they can make things more affordable? And by the way, things are going quite well right now with the economy, despite what you may hear. Inflation keeps coming down, 3.5%. That's not bad. It's not perfect. You want around 2-point-something% to be realistic. You're never going to have it at 0, obviously. But you're like 2 and change. All right, that's fine. But compared to 9.4% like it was under Biden, 3.5 suddenly looks good. Jobs reports have been excellent. Earnings have been excellent as far as most companies. So yeah, things are humming along quite well, especially when you compare them to the 4 years under the auto pen. And there is Mark Warner saying, well, it was the first of my family to graduate college. Yeah, great answer for why you endorsed Graham Plattner up until you couldn't anymore because it wasn't politically expedient. Oh, man. Meanwhile, here's Seth Moulton. He is just a profoundly horrible human being from Massachusetts. And I guess he says, as we like to say here, the quiet part out loud as far as, well, once you take back the House, if you do, what's your plan for immigration, for example? What's your plan around that? Because Trump, secured the border, right? So that's a good thing. So if you got a plan, then let's hear it. And this is actually his plan, which is no plan at all. Cut number 12, go.
There are a lot of people in America who feel that the Democratic Party is out of touch. We can't be honest about what's going on, with immigration. We don't have a plan. for immigration. We're not able to say what actually Democrats should do to fix the problem. All we are is opposition to Trump. Under Biden, we said inflation is not really a big deal. It's transitory. It's going to go away. And then the whole party said, hey, don't worry. Everything's great. Joe is awesome. He can run for re-election. So the point is we have this history of kind of just like washing over problems and not addressing real concerns that voters have. We got to make sure we don't do that.
Okay, but we've got to make sure. Do you think you're doing that now? Because look no further than a state just north of you, Maine, where I kind of feel like that happened 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, I think that's honest. I mean, to be honest, it's a problem. It's still a problem.
Well, give them points for honesty, I guess, but still, they don't have a plan. It's resist Trump, get in, and I guess worry about it later. Actually, not worry about it later. They'll just impeach Trump when he's in there. They won't remove him because you need 2/3 of the Senate. That ain't going to happen. But it'll be one big show to show the resisting. And then before you know the presidential election, or at least the campaigns begin, they nominate Kamala Harris and they lose again. Save the tape. That's exactly what's going to happen. Okay, before we go to break, this is just unbelievable. See, Megan Rapinoe was on The View today to talk about the men's World Cup. Like maybe you want to get like Alexi Lalas or you want to get some sort of person from the men's side to talk about this. A former player. No, they put on Rapinoe, because she once said, I'm not going to the effing White House when they were going to win the World Cup back during Trump's first term. So perfect for that show. And here's Sonny just over the moon around how the U.S. men's team has to split the World Cup pot, the payout, with the women's team who weren't even playing in this, obviously. But because of woke legislation, the women get a big chunk of what the men just generated because they deserve equal pay or something. And I'll share some numbers behind this, which will just blow your effing mind. In cut number 15, go.
Well, let me ask you this, because you've been at the forefront of the fight for equal pay in women's sports. And she has been. In 2019, you and your teammates filed a landmark class action lawsuit against the U.S. Soccer Federation, eventually resulting in a $24 million settlement. Wow. Yes. A pledge to equalize pay, and a historic 2022 collective bargaining agreement that, among other things, requires an equal split of World Cup prize money between the men and women's team, which I think is incredible. Yeah. So what does that mean to you?
Yeah.
You were the face of that, the voice.
Yeah, I mean,
That's good, Kev. So it is incredible, isn't it? Collective bargaining, even split, even when one team isn't playing in a tournament, the women's team. All right. So here are your money stats of the day. Fox Sports and Telemundo in the U.S. carried the World Cup final. U.S. wasn't in it, of course. It was Argentina versus Spain. Spain wins 1-0 in extra time. All right. More than 60 million people tuned in to that game. The U.S., the World Cup played in the U.S., the men's final. Okay. More than 60 million. Guess how many tuned in to the women's final in 2023 on the women's side? 2.1 million in the U.S. 2 million viewers versus more than 60 million viewers. 30 times more. And you're saying that the money should be split evenly between the women's and the men's side? Why? Just based on math. Take gender out of it. Which tournament is watched infinitely more? The men's tournament. So why should women get half? It's almost like divorce, right? Half. Ooh, we should find that, Kev. We should play the half clip from Eddie Murphy talking about how what a man's face looks like when he loses half his money during divorce. We should definitely do that. We'll try to find that during the break. And back with more in just a moment here on WABC and on stations around country, around the world. This is the Joe Concha Show. The Joe Concha tonight. Yes, as promised. Stick around.
This is the Joe Concha Show, weekday edition, sponsored by the Tunnel to Towers Foundation. Here's Joe Concha.
There really are no words to describe how ridiculously shameless and stupid Jasmine Crockett is. Now, fortunately, she's on her way out of Congress. She, of course, represents a district in the Austin area in Texas, and then she ran for Senate and got beat by Beto O'Rourke 2.0 and James Tallarico. And she'll end up on either Abby Phillips' show as a co-host on CNN or probably on The View as a rotating co-host. Either way, there is a future for her in the ridiculous world of television. But in the meantime, I guess she's auditioning now because here she actually makes this argument that people were rooting against. I can't quite tell what her point is here. Either she thinks that there were people around the world rooting against either Argentina or Spain. And the reason was because of, starts with an R, ends in an M. All right. Racism. Everything's about race, including who you root for in the World Cup final or something. Cut number 14, go.
The World Cup that captured the imaginations of the entire world when they saw all of these people of color that was playing for all these teams. And ultimately, if you recall, the last two teams, it was Argentina and Spain. And it seemed like the vast majority of the world was rooting for Argentina, or actually against Argentina, right? Wait, and why was that? Just give me an explanation if you could guess. If you'll just let them finish the answer.
Spain had the best team. Maybe that's why they were rooting for them.
There's also a racist history that exists.
Mr. Byer, you're recognized. Thank you, Jeff.
Maybe people were rooting for Spain was the favorite, but they felt like the underdog because they're going against the greatest player of all time and Messi. So I didn't sense that anybody was rooting for or against either team. Quite frankly, at least at the watch party that I was at, they just wanted a good game. It was probably the best 1-0 game you'll ever see. But again, well, they were rooting against or for. Again, she doesn't quite make it clear. Argentina or Spain because of a history of racism. Oh, good luck on The View, my friend. Meanwhile, another stupid person, fortunately, will no longer be on ESPN, and that is Ryan Clark. Here, he talks about, I couldn't believe when he said it, and I thought like there was going to be a joke at the end. Didn't happen. He was just fired from ESPN today. I had to say this about Brady, as in Tom Brady, who won 7 Super Bowls. Let's see, Peyton Manning, who won 2 Super Bowls with 2 different teams, and Drew Brees, who has thrown for more yards than almost anybody, and probably should have won more Super Bowls, got screwed over one year, but we won't get into that. Cut number 6, go.
I think John Elway was a generational talent. I think Patrick Mahomes is a generational talent. I don't think Tom Brady, I don't think Drew Brees, I don't think Peyton Manning are generational talents. I think Andrew Luck ended up being a generational talent. I don't think there's a ton of them out there.
But so then what, then how does one in your eyes be a generational talent? Because there's not a lot of difference.
Production. Let me chime in here because I love the argument back and forth between y'all. I ain't trying to get in the way of it. Here's the reality. The operative word here is. Do you believe Arch Manning is a generational talent?
All right, we're good. We get the point. So Ryan Clark says that he doesn't believe that Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, and Drew Brees are generational talents. Combined between them, they have 10 Super Bowls, have set all sorts of records, and they're not generational talents, but Andrew Luck is, who won 0 Super Bowls and got to 0 Super Bowls. I'm not saying Andrew Luck wasn't a great player, had a horrible offensive line, ended up getting the crap beaten out of him, and he had to retire early. But let's stop it with Tom Brady not being a generational talent when you win 7 Super Bowls. That's 3 more than the closest quarterback, whether we're talking about Bradshaw or Montana. So please stop. And again, over and over again, this guy has said profoundly stupid things. And now ESPN said, all right, I guess we have had enough. All right, one more clip before we wrap this puppy up. And that, of course, is Harry Sisson. If you want to talk about that, we'll continue with the sports theme, I guess. This kid probably weighs 115 pounds. He's a liberal influencer who's wrong about basically everything. Now, because he can't debate anybody on the merits, he just wants to fight everybody in the Trump administration. And where does he go to make this proclamation? To Don Lemon, of course. And cut number 5, go.
And I've suggested to people before in interviews, I'm like, I want to fight them. I think.
Like a fight them?
Yeah. Like if Stephen Miller would agree, or one of the Trump children, or like anybody in the administration, I want to fight them.
God, you know what? That I would go pay to see on the White House lawn.
That's what I'm saying.
In the UFC.
Why are we doing the UFC event? Why don't we just settle some political beef? I'll take anybody in the White House.
This kid is a human broomstick. And he wants to fight people. Don Lemon, I'd pay to see that. Can Don afford it? He hasn't had a job in quite a long time. Anyway, this is Joe Concha. Thanks so much for tuning in. We're back tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Eastern time at WABC on stations around the country, around the world. Until then, 2 words for you. Stay dry.